They were laughing, the kind of laughter that says, "This isn't serious, morality. Come on, who even believes in that anymore?" That smug, dismissive tone filled the studio. But I wasn't there to play along, I was there to confront the absurdity head-on. And for a moment, I let the laughter ride out, because I knew what was coming would silence every smirk in the room. It started with the usual talking points. Freedom, personal choice, your truth, and all the other slogans we throw around to excuse anything we feel like doing. One guest said, "Morality is subjective, Piers. What's wrong for you isn't wrong for me." And the others nodded like it was a profound truth. But I couldn't stay silent. I leaned in and said, "If morality is just whatever we want it to be, then explain to me why we still have outrage." There was a pause. I asked them directly, why do we still call some things evil? Why do we condemn cheating, abuse, exploitation, lying? Why does injustice still spark protest? If there's no right or wrong, why react at all? You could feel the energy shift. It was no longer funny. Because deep down they knew I wasn't wrong. We all carry an innate sense that some things are just the wrong, no matter what century we live in or what culture we come from. But here's the real hypocrisy. We praise freedom to do whatever we want, but then we're shocked when that freedom leads to chaos. We glorify cheating in relationships, applaud vulgarity as empowerment, and treat loyalty or faith as outdated, and then we wonder why anxiety, betrayal, and distrust are everywhere. I pointed this out, not to shame anyone, but to hold up a mirror. I said, "We've traded virtue for vanity, and now we're offended by the mess we made." No one was laughing then. I told them a story. A man once said, "A nation that kills its conscience cannot survive." That wasn't a religious leader or philosopher. That was a judge. Because even in law, conscience matters. But today, we're told to ignore that inner voice. We mock shame, glorify selfishness, and say guilt is just programming. And still, we're emptier than ever. The camera caught one of the guests looking down. She wasn't smiling anymore. I reminded them that morality isn't a restriction, it's a rescue. Rules exist for a reason. You put guardrails on a highway not to ruin the drive, but to keep people alive. In the same way, moral boundaries aren't meant to control, they're meant to protect. Remove them, and everything collapses. Families break down. Trust disappears. Meaning vanishes. We're told that anything traditional is repressive. But maybe tradition held something we shouldn't have let go. Maybe the old paths were there because they worked. Maybe the freedom we've been chasing is actually a cage. Because when everything is allowed, nothing matters. I looked directly into the camera, not for drama, but because someone watching needed to hear it without the noise. I said, "You're not crazy for believing in right and wrong. You're not outdated. You're not judgmental. You're awake." It's wild how that one moment, just one sentence, can turn laughter into reflection. But that's what truth does. It pierces, and sometimes it hurts. But not because it's cruel, because it's calling you back to purpose. Back to something deeper than trends, hashtags, and applause. One guest pushed back. He said, "But who decides what's moral, Piers? Religion? The government?" I replied calmly, "That's exactly why we needed to agree on foundational truths. Not everything is subjective. And if we don't stand for something timeless, we'll fall for whatever's trending." The room was quiet. It wasn't victory. It was reality settling in. I don't speak about morality to win debates. I do it because we're running out of time. Look around. Confusion is everywhere. Our kids are growing up with no anchors. Relationships are transactional. Identity is fluid. And yet no one seems happier. That should tell us something. I'm not perfect. Never claimed to be. But I've lived long enough to know that without truth, real, unshakable truth, we drift, and drifting leads to drowning. So yes, I challenge the laughter. Not because I hate freedom, but because I love truth. And if speaking it makes people uncomfortable, then maybe that discomfort is a sign we've been numb for too long. They laughed at immorality until they saw the cost, until they realized the joke was on us. And when I said what I said, when the words cut through the smirks, it wasn't about sounding clever. It was about awakening something forgotten. Because deep down, we all know some things are still sacred. And it's time we stopped pretending otherwise. They were all laughing. That kind of dismissive, sarcastic laughter that fills the room when people think they're too clever to take something seriously. It wasn't just amusement, it was mockery. The topic was morality, and apparently that's something people now feel comfortable laughing at. I sat there, watching it unfold, wondering how we got here. When did things like virtue, discipline, and responsibility become punchlines? They thought the conversation was going to be another easy round of modern justifications. Live how you want, do what feels good, no right or wrong, just personal truth. I let them speak. I let the chuckles echo, because I was waiting for that one moment where truth, actual, undeniable truth, would land like a thunderclap. And it did. I looked across the table and said it plainly, if everything is subjective, then nothing matters. That's when the air changed. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Truth doesn't need volume. It just needs to be spoken. You could almost hear the silence spread like a ripple in still water, because that's the line that broke the rhythm of the debate. That was the moment when it stopped being a game. One of them had said, "We all have our own truths, so who are you to judge?" And I replied, "If someone steals from you, do you still believe in a personal truth then?" She froze. That was it. That was the silencing moment of truth. You see, everyone loves the idea of moral fluidity until it touches their life, until betrayal knocks at their door, until dishonesty costs them something, until they're on the receiving end of the very chaos they helped excuse. Then suddenly, right and wrong aren't so vague anymore. People act like morality is a relic of the past, something imposed by religion or tradition. But deep down, we all have a sense of justice wired into us. It's not something we invented, it's something we uncover when we see what happens without it. That's what I was trying to say. That's what finally hit them. I told them, we've glorified the idea of living without boundaries, but maybe that's why so many people feel lost. There was a man to my right who had been chuckling just minutes before. Now he was staring at the floor, not embarrassed, just thinking. That's the power of truth. It doesn't humiliate. It awakens. We talked about cheating, lying, using people for short-term pleasure. We talked about how these things are normalized now, celebrated even, but no one wants to deal with the consequences, the broken families, the trust issues, the depression. I said, you're not free when you abandon morality. You're enslaved to impulse. Someone scoffed. I could tell they were ready to push back. But before they could, I asked, do you think a society where nothing is sacred is actually a better one? Do you think people are happier now, more grounded, more fulfilled? Silence. That was all the answer I needed, because the truth is, we know we're not. We know something is deeply off. We see it in the loneliness, the addiction, the endless scrolling, the numbness. We're surrounded by noise but starving for meaning. And meaning doesn't come from living without rules, it comes from living with purpose. I told them about a story I heard about a man who left his family for freedom only to return years later broken, empty, full of regret. He said, I chased what the world told me would fulfill me, and it left me with nothing. That story isn't rare. It's happening everywhere. And the reason? We stopped honoring truth, we replaced it with trends. The conversation took a turn. It wasn't fun anymore. It was real. That's what makes a moment like that powerful. When people stop defending their arguments and start questioning their assumptions. I wasn't there to win a debate. I wasn't trying to look smarter than anyone. I just wanted to say what so many are afraid to say, that morality still matters, that we need it, that without it we break. As individuals, as a culture, as a future. One woman looked at me and said quietly, but it's so hard to live that way now. You get judged, you get mocked. I nodded. Yeah, I said, you do. But isn't it worth it? Because what's the alternative? Living a life that pleases everyone but fulfills no one, compromising so often that you forget who you are. That was the moment she understood. You could see it in her eyes. I ended by saying this. We don't need more freedom to do whatever we want. We need more courage to do what's right, even when it's unpopular. That landed. Not like a mic drop, more like a reminder. A wake-up call. That moment when the laughter dies down and people start remembering what they've always known but forgot how to say. And that's the thing. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs a quiet second to breathe. And in that second, it silences everything else. They told us we were progressing, that shedding tradition meant we were becoming freer, more enlightened, that anything old must be repressive, and anything new, no matter how reckless, was a sign of growth. At first, I believed it, we all did. Who doesn't want to believe in the idea of progress? But somewhere along the line, I started to notice the cracks. We celebrated the tearing down of every boundary. We applauded people for breaking free of values that supposedly held them back. Faithfulness in relationships, outdated. Modesty, oppressive. Discipline, toxic. Morality itself was reduced to a punchline, and suddenly Everything was permissible, because who are you to judge? It was all fine until the consequences started showing up. I looked around and saw families falling apart, kids confused about who they are, adults unable to stay in a relationship for more than a few months, depression, anxiety, and loneliness skyrocketing. But instead of asking what went wrong, we doubled down. We told ourselves we just need more freedom, more expression, more rebellion, as if chaos could somehow cure the emptiness we feel inside. I remember saying on the show, we've glorified every form of indulgence and mocked every form of restraint, and we wonder why nothing feels stable anymore. That's when it clicked. We weren't progressing. We were decaying, slowly, subtly, and most of us didn't even see it happening. We mock marriage but mourn broken homes. We sexualize everything but wonder why trust is gone. We raise our kids with no moral anchor and act shocked when they drift. And we keep asking the same question, why does the world feel like it's falling apart? The answer is simple. We removed the guardrails. We told ourselves that values were flexible, that truth was relative, and that tradition was holding us back. But those things existed for a reason, not to control us, but to protect us, to give structure to something as fragile as human nature. Without them, we don't evolve, we unravel. People think freedom is doing whatever you want. It's not. Real freedom is living with purpose, with limits, with direction. Because the moment you throw away every standard, every principle, every line in the sand, you don't get freedom. You get chaos. And you don't even notice it at first. It starts small, a shift in language. A few jokes that wouldn't have aired 10 years ago. A song that glorifies what we used to be ashamed of. A billboard that sells empowerment but drips with degradation. But over time, it adds up. And suddenly, we're in a culture that celebrates dysfunction, worships fame, and forgets what it means to be human. I've had people say, Piers, you're just being nostalgic. Times change. And sure, times do change. But human nature doesn't. We still crave love, truth, and belonging. We still long for meaning. And when a culture doesn't give that to people, they find it in all the wrong places. Look at the stats. We're more connected than ever, yet more alone. We have more options than ever, yet more regret. We're drowning in information and starving for wisdom. And all the while, we're told this is what progress looks like. It's not. Progress builds. Decay destroys. And what we're seeing now is destruction disguised as freedom. And don't get me wrong, I'm not romanticizing the past. The past had its flaws, but it also had foundations. People believed in something. They lived with conviction. They passed down values that gave the next generation a chance to thrive. Today, we're passing down confusion, division, and despair, and calling it liberation. That's the bitter irony. We thought we were freeing ourselves from judgment, but all we've done is trade it for something worse. Now we live in constant fear of offending someone. We've replaced moral clarity with performative outrage. You can say the most vulgar, reckless thing and get applause, but say something truthful and you risk getting cancelled. What we're witnessing isn't boldness. It's collapse, and deep down people feel it. They may not say it out loud, but they feel it. In their homes, in their relationships, in their mental health. There's a growing ache in the soul of this generation, and no amount of noise can drown it out. That ache is the absence of truth, of structure, of moral clarity. So I said it on air, not to lecture, not provoke, but to wake people up. Because if we don't see what's happening now, we'll lose everything we once thought we stood for. It's not about politics. It's not about religion. It's about reality. And reality doesn't care how progressive your slogans are. Reality has consequences. You can't rip out the foundation and expect the house to stand. We've made a mess of this culture, and we keep trying to solve it with more distractions, more indulgence, more self-worship. But none of that heals. It only numbs. What we need now isn't more liberation. It's more truth, more responsibility, more courage to say, this isn't working. And we need to go back, not to old-fashioned rules, but to timeless values, to the idea that some things are still sacred, that character matters, that faith matters, that family matters, that restraint isn't weakness, it's strength. We've had enough decay. What we need now is rebuilding. And it starts by admitting that we're not better off without morality, we're worse. And until we return to what held us together, we'll keep falling apart. I know it's not popular, I know it's not easy. But maybe that's the point. The truth rarely is. It was never about going viral. That was never the plan. I wasn't trying to spark a trend or chase a headline. I was just speaking from a place of frustration, of honesty, maybe even a little desperation. We were on set, mid-discussion, and someone said, "It's all just evolution, isn't it? Society grows. We outgrow old values." I paused, looked straight at him, and replied, "We haven't evolved. We've decayed. We've traded truth for trend, and now we're paying the price." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't try to be dramatic. But the second those words left my mouth, I knew something shifted. The energy in the room changed. The laughter quieted. The usual smirk disappeared. And when the clip hit the internet, it exploded. People weren't sharing it because it was catchy. They were sharing it because it said what they'd been thinking for years, but never heard spoken out loud. Because behind all the noise, all the opinions, all the slogans, people knew something was off. And for once, someone had just come out and said it. Oh, it started slowly, just a few reposts. Then the views started climbing, hundreds of thousands, then millions. Comment after comment poured in. This is what I've been feeling. I thought I was the only one. I showed this to my kids. Finally, someone said it. The word struck a nerve, not because they were clever, but because they were real. In a world built on performance, truth stands out like a siren. It's strange how fast it happened. A single moment, a single sentence, going from just another segment on a crowded show to the centerpiece of conversations happening everywhere. It was in classrooms, dinner tables, church groups, WhatsApp threads. People weren't just reacting, they were thinking. And that's when I knew this wasn't about going viral. This was about awakening, because deep down, people are exhausted by the lies we've been sold, about freedom, about morality, about what it means to live good life. We were told that breaking the rules would set us free. That if we just removed every boundary, life would feel limitless. But it didn't. It left us directionless. And suddenly, one honest sentence reminded people that they weren't crazy for feeling that emptiness. That they weren't alone in asking, what happened to us? We used to believe in things, not perfect things, but solid things. Truth, family, faith, character, not because they were trendy, but because they worked. They gave life meaning, they gave people identity. But somewhere along the way, we tossed them out in exchange for applause. And now we're watching the fallout in real time. I said on air. We call it progress, but look around. Are people healthier, happier, more grounded? No one had an answer. Because everyone feels what's going wrong, they just don't know how to say it without sounding old-fashioned, or worse, judgmental. That moment gave them the words. But here's the part no one talks about: going viral doesn't solve anything. If it ends with likes and shares, it's wasted. The real power is what happens after. And after that clip blew up, something started changing. People began asking deeper questions. Parents talked to their kids. Teens started rethinking the culture they've been swimming in. Even people who disagreed admitted, "I can't ignore what he said." That's the turning point, not the trend, not the algorithm boost, the moment when truth makes people pause. And in today's world, getting people to stop, even for a second, is a miracle, but truth does that. Not because it's loud, because it resonates. It's familiar, like a compass buried under layers of noise and distraction. When you hear it, it pulls something out of you, and you realize you've been longing for it without even knowing. It's funny, people often ask, "Did you expect that line to go viral?" No, I expected it to be uncomfortable. I expected some backlash. But I also knew I couldn't stay silent, because silence is part of how we got here. Everyone trying to be polite while the world crumbles. Everyone smiling while their hearts are breaking. So I told the truth, and it just happened to go viral. But here's what I've learned: the truth isn't popular until it's undeniable. Until the damage is too visible to ignore. Until the smiling stops and the questions start. That's where we are now. The turning point isn't the clip. It's the recognition, the moment when people stop defending the decline and start searching for the truth they left behind. That's what made that moment matter. Not because it was mine, but because it was ours. Everyone's been waiting for permission to question the narrative. That clip gave them permission. So no, I didn't script it. I didn't plan it. I just spoke what I knew was true. And the fact that truth broke through the noise, that it cut across ideologies, faiths, even countries, proves something we all forgetting: truth still works. It doesn't need makeup, it doesn't need marketing. It just needs a moment, one moment where someone's willing to say, "We've gone too far." And it's okay to turn back. That was the moment. Not the end of the conversation, the beginning of a new one. And if I had to say it again, I would, exactly the same way, because it wasn't just a line, it was a mirror. And finally, people were ready to look.